Good morning, everyone. Sorry we ran a little late this morning. Obviously, we had canceled our meeting in December, so we had quite a bit to go through this morning, and we will end up going back into closed session after we finish this here. There must be something important going to happen this morning. So, yeah. I'm just not sure what's going on. We had a great opportunity as a board to spend time with so many of our quality leaders in our department. And throughout this process, we were able to determine that our St. Louis Police Department is in a very, very strong position. And obviously, we were able to appoint our new chief, Mr. Dotson, that we're proud to have. But in the process of going through our interviews with everyone, there was an area that they were consistent with that they said we need to address, and that was to re-engage our majors. And with that being said, I would like to have Chief Dotson stand up and talk about what his vision is and what the board has approved going forward.
Colonels, good morning, and thank you, and I appreciate that. And just as we get started this morning, I wanted to compliment the board for not many chiefs have the opportunity as they step into this role to be able to assemble a leadership team. Because of our structure, lots of ranks are already filled to capacity. We had an opportunity here to move some captains to the rank of major to help fill a senior leadership role and a senior position in the department. And the people that we discuss in a few minutes will fill very key roles in a couple of areas. They will help us with our crime-fighting strategies, which, as I've toured the department and visited neighborhood groups, have emphasized that that's our #1 mission, our #1 goal, to continue to reduce crime. And we're going to talk about our crime report in a few minutes. And 2012 was a very progressive year for the department and a very good year, and we have some very big shoes to fill as we move forward. I wanted to make sure that the individuals that were selected to fill these roles were focused on the same things that I was, the same things that the board was, the same thing that the mayor was, to continue to reduce crime. So I'm very happy that the board supported these promotions to major. But before we do that, I just going in rank order, I wanted to also acknowledge that the board today voted to reinstate the rank of assistant chief and selected Lieutenant Colonel Al Atkins as the assistant chief of the department. So congratulations. As we move forward, we've invited all of the captains and now majors to be with us today. They should all be here except Mike Caruso, who's out of town. So I just told you who the first one is. Captain Mike Caruso has now been promoted to the rank of major. Along with Captain Rochelle D. Jones. Captain Jerry Layshock. Captain Ronnie Robinson. And just so everyone knows, we went in alphabetical order, Captain Joe Spees. In doing that, we created some vacancies, and we are elevating a lieutenant to the rank of captain. And as I read this name, I also want to compliment Lieutenant Mike Deba to captain. As many of you know, Captain Deba is the commander of our SWAT team, and he and his officers performed incredibly well, admirably yesterday as we responded to the shooting at Stevens Institute. So I thank you and I thank your team for the great work yesterday. To the rank of lieutenant, we're promoting two, Sergeant Anthony Aubuchon and Sergeant Robert Bonet. To the rank of sergeant, we're promoting 8, Officer Anthony Abel. Officer Christy Allen. Officer Michael Benz. Officer Rodney Hickman. Officer Raymond Jackson. Stand up. Officer Stephen Schwerb. Officer Clifford Summer. And Officer John Winter. So thank you, everyone, for participating in the promotion process, and know that now the hard work begins because we still have a lot of work to do to move the agency forward. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Chief. I got a little bit excited about what he was able to do, that I forgot to approve our minutes from the last meeting of November 21st, so I need to get a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mayor, would you like to say anything in reference to promotion?
First of all, I just want to congratulate all those that have been elevated today. Certainly, all of you have demonstrated a tremendous amount of leadership, and I can tell you, I agree with the president of this board that during the interview process, we as a board and I as mayor learned a tremendous more about this department and the people, the individual, and the leadership that we have, and I can tell you it was all positive. I have a lot of great expectations for this department and our new chief, and looking forward to working with everyone in the future. I think I'd like the chief, though, to just address one thing about the promotions that people may be thinking about. What impacts is going to have on the department budget, the promotions, as we go forward, as you explained to the board when we made these decisions?
As I've made my tour of the department talking about the future of the department, we certainly see reducing the number of districts from 9 to 6 or something less than 9. There are savings that will happen as we do that. What we've done today is elevated the captains from captain to major and not backfilling those positions. And so I needed one captain to fill the organizational chart. So the net change there is minimal. It's less than $50,000 for those promotions. It's about $8,000 per promotion to do that. So there is minimal fiscal impact to the department for these promotions, and as we move forward with our vision to reduce the number of districts within the department, there will be savings from those efficiencies.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to our purchasing.
Thank you, Colonel. The following items are presented in the bid packet that you received. Copies of the packets are available for public review, and if there were any disclaimers regarding business relationships, they were included, but I don't think this packet has any. Because we did not have a December meeting, these items come from the last 2 meetings. The first item in your packet is for approval of 4 items from December due to the cancellation of that December meeting: off-site shredding, SWAT ballistic vest, ultra-low freezer, and sports flex track. Move approval of that item, of those items.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Second, our approval of sole source requests. There were 2 items listed, one for maintenance for the security licensing system and another for software maintenance. I move approval of those 2 items.
So moved.
Second. I mean, sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 The third item is a single item in your packet. This is a continuation of a previous bid. Approval is sought for a continuation of a bid for annual inspection and repairs to the fire protection system. Ask for approval. I move for approval of that item.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item is for cooperating contracts. One item for miscellaneous hardware items, and I move for approval of that item.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Next item is for increase to previous purchase orders. There are 4 items listed here for the Boyer Fire Protection, Fabric, Home Depot, and Docs Harley-Davidson. Move approval of those 4 items.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item is for a bid approval for ballistic helmets from Edward Safety Products for about $10,000. Move approval of that item.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item is for cooperating contracts. This is for the purchase of 2 Chevrolet Tahoes for the Traffic Safety Department for about $60,000. Move approval of that item.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The last on the list of the purchase orders is an increase to a previous purchase order. Approval for an increase for Bear Graphics, increased by $10,000. Move approval of that item.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Then I have one more item to report, which are some changes to the purchasing manual. You should have in your packet a document that highlights the changes in our purchasing processes. There are 2 changes of note. The most significant is that we realized we had provisions for dealing with emergencies, but we really didn't explicitly have a provision dealing with a situation where something couldn't wait till the next board meeting, but probably would not fall under the true category of an emergency. And so we're treating these as expedited purchases. So we have language there. The other thing that we've done is modified the language of the existing policy, which provided for the purchasing member to be able to approve purchases between meetings. And it was my opinion that state statute does not allow the purchasing member to do that, only the board president to do that. So we've changed that language to put that power in the board president. In order to remove a burden on the board president, the purchasing member will continue to have the initial review, and if the purchasing member recommends that the purchase be made prior to the next board meeting, then it would go to the board president for consideration of approval. Also from my understanding, there has actually never been a situation where there was a purchasing member approval that wasn't later ratified by the board as a whole. So there's no question on the validity of any prior purchases. So I ask the board to approve those changes to the purchasing manual as described in your packet.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to the crime presentation, which will be the results for 2012. During my presentation, I will ask Professor Rick Rosenfeld to step up for a few minutes to talk about some of the observations that the University of Missouri has found about our crime statistics. As you know, Professor Rosenfeld is embedded with the police department and has been for quite a while, and hopefully will be continuing for quite a while, helping us analyze crime, develop our hotspot and HDI strategies. And he has some very unique perspectives and very unique looks at the way that we do business, and I'm very happy to have that partnership and to continue that partnership. So let's look at the crime for 2012. The city of St. Louis for the entire year experienced a decrease of 12.4% in total crime, and it is that red block as you see. Person crime decreased about 5%, property crime about 14.2%. So we saw decreases in all the major crime categories, person and property crime, as we move through the year, and we'll talk about some of the individual areas in just a minute. I always get the question is, how is crime throughout the city? If you look at this graph, it shows you that we've seen reductions, the next graph, the next slide, we've seen reductions in all 3 areas of the city, north, south, and central. South experienced a 19.7 reduction in total crime. The central corridor experienced a 7.2% reduction, and the north experienced a 6.3 reduction. So we continue to have our enforcement activities spread throughout the city and continue to see results. When you look at a crime-by-crime category comparison, homicides for 2012 compared to 2011 we had the same number, 113. Rape, we saw an increase, and just as a caveat to the board and to the public, we anticipate to see increases in rape category as we move forward. The UCR, and not because of more occurrences, but better accountability and better counting. The FBI, in their uniform crime reporting requirements, has broadened the category to include several new occurrences and offenses, including same-sex. And so in talking to our planning and technology people who do the coding for us, we anticipate to see almost 100% increase in that category. That's not because of additional crimes, but it's better accounting and better understanding and better support to the victims. So we see that as a positive thing, but just as a note, I anticipate an increase in rape as we move forward through the year. Robberies on a citywide basis saw a 16.5% decrease in 2012. Aggravated assaults, Professor Rosenfeld will talk about, and I'll talk about a little bit more, an increase of 1.4%. But as you'll see in a later slide, the occurrences of aggravated assaults with a firearm were basically flat, a slight decrease. There are other categories included there, and we saw increases in aggravated assaults in those categories, not the use of a firearm. Burglaries led the decreases throughout the city with a 28.9% decrease compared to the previous year. Larcenies, an 11.5% decrease, and we're going to talk about some strategies to continue that. Early in 2013, we've seen an increase in some areas, including license plate and license plate tab theft, and we're going to talk about some strategies to combat those. Vehicle theft up slightly at 3.6. It's important to remember that the previous year was a 20-plus year low in vehicle theft, and crime unfortunately doesn't go down in a straight line. It goes up and down. We've also seen an increase in that area of heavy vehicles, older vehicles that are being stolen for scrap, and we're going to talk about some legislation to potentially prohibit that from occurring. And then the arson category with a slight increase. The next slide looks at homicides in a 10-year comparison spread throughout the city. Again, 113 homicides last year, or 113 too many. We're going to continue this year with our homicide deterrent initiatives, with our hotspot policing, and really try and dig into areas that the aggravated assault and the homicide category and push those numbers down as low as we possibly can. You'll see the 10-year comparison, with the exception of for 2003, we're in a very, very good spot. In trying to keep our reductions moving. In homicides, we haven't seen a significant change as they're dispersed throughout the city. The next graph looks at aggravated assaults. The red line is 2012. The blue line is a 5-year average. As you look through the 5-year average, you see that we spent most of the year after April significantly below the 5-year trend in aggravated assaults. That just gives a longer-term perspective. Year to year, sometimes you see those blips, but when you look at the 5 years perspective, you really see that we have made progress in the aggravated assault category. The next slide, as I talked about, looks at aggravated assaults with firearms. And again, with exception of a couple of spikes, we spent most of the year below the 5-year average in aggravated assaults with firearms, and we're looking to continue that. This slide talks about, indicates what I told you a few minutes ago, that if you look at the entire aggravated assault category, we were up slightly, 1.4%. We saw an almost flat movement in guns, so the number of aggravated assaults committed with firearms remained very similar, very flat. Knives took a nice decrease of 5.3%. But other and hands, fist, and feet are the areas in the aggravated assault category we saw the greatest increase. Not that that should be reassuring, but at least it's helping us to understand the category and understanding the types of strategies we need to implement. I don't know if Dr. Rosenfeld wanted to come up at this point and talk about his observations about aggravated assaults and crimes throughout the city.
Thank you, Chief. I have two observations. If you saw, as you saw on that slide showing crime trends by month over the year, and if you read or heard the news reports of the recent UCR figures for the first half of 2012, it was the case that aggravated assaults were up in the city during the first half of 2012. Aggravated assaults and firearm assaults specifically closed out essentially flat over the previous year, which means that the decreases came in the second half of the year. And those decreases were driven by a number of factors, but one notable factor is the Hotspots Enforcement Initiative, specifically the HDI initiative that was implemented at the end of August and lasted a month. I've talked with this board before about the effectiveness of that initiative. I've rarely seen enforcement initiatives that have generated crime reductions of that magnitude in a relatively short period of time. My suggestion would be to continue those enforcement strategies that were put into place during HDI. Second comment I would make, or observation, is more long-term. The City of St. Louis currently is running at person and property crime rates, that is, population-adjusted rates that we've not seen since the 1970s. That has to be counted as good news. There's plenty of room for improvement, but the city is clearly making progress in bringing down both person and property crimes.
Let's just go to the next slide right now. And to follow up on what the professor said, this shows, going back to 1970, the crime trend line for person crime. And as you can see, in the mid-90s, there were some significant spikes that I think most people would accredit to the spread of crack cocaine, the epidemic drug wars that were going on. We saw a significant amount of violence, not only in St. Louis, but throughout the country. We'll look at the next slide. That lays in property crime, and you'll see a significant decrease in property crime as we move from 1970 to 2012. And the next slide, the red line, shows total crime. If you look at the white line, it shows the trend line, which has been decreasing. As the professor said, we are seeing lows since the early 1970s in all categories. St. Louis County is also reporting their crime numbers today, and they're citing lows since 1969. So our trends are very consistent with what's been going on throughout the region along with the county. The question that everyone asks is, well, as the population has changed in the city of St. Louis and crime has gone down, it's because of a population shift. So as the professor talked about, we looked at it as an index basis or a per thousand. And the next slide shows the per thousand population shift. We took the 1970 census, compared it to the 2010 census, looked at the total number of crimes that occurred and the total number in each year. An occurrence in 1970 of 115 crimes per person, and in 2012, 87 crimes per person. Again, 87 crimes or more crimes than we would like to have, too many crimes, but it shows that we're trending down and moving in the right direction, even in population-based numbers, adjusted numbers. Person crime, I talked about the spike in the 1990s. We picked 1993 as the high year for person crime, an occurrence rate of 38 violent crimes per 1,000. In 2012, that rate had dropped below 20 to 18. So again, looking at crime not only in a cycle, but also looking at it per capita adjusted, we seem to be moving in the right direction. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the presentation and the results from 2012. I give a lot of credit, as Professor Rosenfeld said, to the HDI initiative, to the hotspot policing, and to Chief Isom's focus in the second half of the year on reducing that aggravated assault category.
Chief, the last slide you showed is not, it's per 1,000 people in the population, not per person, correct?
1,000 per 1,000, yes. Okay. Occurrence per 1,000. Thank you. Then we'll move to, under the Chief's report, item B, private security issues. The first one is a request by the private security section. The board requires an initial firearms qualification and a semi-annual firearms requalification for armed corporate security advisors, private security officers, and couriers. STL Sharpshooter Indoor Range has submitted a request to the private security section, and they're requesting that the board approve them as an approved provider.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 2, under the private security section, is a uniformed request for an armed uniform exempt private security license for a retired Sergeant Terry S. Kowalczyk from our department for Children's Hospital.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 4, under the Chief's report, item C, is a request from Monica Green in the benefits section for the regrading of a benefits position. That position had been promoted over the years, 15 years ago, to a higher position. That position is now vacant. She's recommending that the benefits specialist should be regraded to a grade 8, non-exempt, and it will represent a fiscal savings to the department of $14,500 annually.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There is a request from Mike Sack in the Crimes Against Persons Division, a request to adjust the manning table. We, at one time, had a grant for enforcement of orders of protection. That grant has since expired, and the request is to reduce 2 positions in the EPO, Enforcement of Protection Orders, divisions that are no longer funded.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 The next item is a request from now Major Jerry Layshock to approve to agree to a renewal of a contract agreement with the South Grand Business Association. That agreement has been in effect since 2007, and it allows officers to be paid overtime for patrolling the South Grand area from that business district and their CID.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good morning.
Item F is a request from Adrian Berg in our Narcotics and Vice section to accept a grant for an enforcement of underage drinking to be used at, a portion of it to be used at this year's Mardi Gras celebration of $14,443.04.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next is a request from Captain Dan Howard of the 1st District to accept a JAG grant in the amount of $127,004 to be used for activities in the Dutchtown Mount Pleasant neighborhood.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great job.
Item H is a request from Joe Marisi in the Violent Offenders Unit to accept a grant or funds from the United States Marshal Service in the amount of $27,256.66 to be used in overtime in support of that unit's mission of arresting violent offenders.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item I is a request from Bob Muffler of our Cyber Crimes Division to accept $5,000 in grant funds from the Secret Service for electronics crimes investigation, and that money will be used for equipment, overtime, and supplies.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Item J is a request from now Captain Michael Deba to retire Department K-9 Duncan, and that K-9 be donated to a department employee, Anna Maxey, who has been the dog's primary caregiver since February of 12.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next is a request from John Carnegie, who's assigned to special projects and works on a variety of different issues, to accept a donation from the St. Louis Area Regional Response System for a vehicle to support our Special Weapons Tactics Teams, Weapons of Mass Destruction Team, and Disaster Response Team in the amount of $268,393.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And item L, under the Chief's report, is to accept a donation from the Police Foundation of up to $3 million in support of the design, renovation, and upgrade of the new police headquarters at 1915 Olive. And at a future board meeting, I will ask Colonel Reagan and his team to present on the status of the building and where we are in the renovations once the bids have come back.
Colonel, I do have a question on this one. Can you explain exactly what it is that we're approving? Because it's my understanding that it was about a year ago that the foundation approved the donation.
It is. The foundation has approved up to $3 million in support of that. It's my understanding that the board had never accepted, is that correct? Had never accepted the donation of $3 million. So we are accepting the donation from the foundation to be spent towards the renovation, design, and build of that facility.
And will issues as to how that money will be spent, will that be coming to the board, or has the money already been spent?
And Colonel Reagan, if you wanted to comment on this.
Yeah, the Board of Public Service is actually managing the budget for the renovation
It's actually the Board of Public Service that is managing.
You said they submitted to the Police Foundation?
Yes.
That then writes the check? Then what are we accepting? If they're paying it directly?
That's going towards our police headquarters.
So how much has been, of the $3 million has been spent down so far?
The Police Foundation entered into a contract with the architects directly for about $400,000.
And that's part of the $3 million?
Yes, sir.
So I take it this is essentially to make sure that this is a police department expenditure by having this, the motion that you have
It is.
before us today?
This project has several funding sources, and if you wanted to talk about the funding sources just for a minute to give that, yeah, unfortunately, it's not just police department money, it's bond money, city money, and so if you wanted to talk about that for a second.
There's three different funding sources. There's the Police Foundation contributed, there's $3 million. There's asset forfeiture money that is currently $2 million. We're going to ask for an additional $400,000 in the future. Then there's money left over from the 2007 bond issue that the Board of Public Service has dedicated to it in the amount of a little over $4,800,000. So those three different funding sources all have different purchasing criteria.
I would move the approval of the motion as presented with the modification to include a report to the board on status of the new police headquarters project.
Yes, I mean, I think the chief said that, but I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Colonel, if it's all right, once the bidding process is done, just to make sure that we don't taint the bidding process with revealing information about the bid or the competitiveness of the process. So it may not be done by the February meeting. Do you think the bids will be back by the February meeting?
No, this will probably be back
For the March meeting, if that's okay.
I think it would be helpful to have a report on status that doesn't reveal anything that would impair the integrity of the process.
Item A concerns a request by the City of St. Louis Department of Personnel for payroll data, biweekly payroll data. This information would be used by the Department of Personnel to facilitate the transition to city control. Permission is needed from the board because while the city's Information Technology Services Agency performs the service of processing the department's payroll data, the board remains the owner of the actual data. And you can see the various information that's proposed to be turned over to the city. So the recommendation would be to approve the release of that data on a biweekly basis to the city.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item B concerns proposed budget transfers. These proposed transfers were previously approved by former Chief Isom. The transfers are primarily for equipment for the police academy and the lab.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item C concerns a briefing by the police retirement system regarding proposed amendments to Chapter 86 of the revised statutes of Missouri, which deal with the retirement of police officers. And Captain Michael Sack, who is a member of the Board of Trustees of the Police Retirement System, is here to brief the board.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. The St. Louis Police Retirement System and the Kansas City Police Retirement System are both created and governed by state statute. There are some similarities and there are some differences. One of the things that we looked at over this past year is one difference in regards to the application and awarding of accidental disabilities. We believe there's an opportunity to improve the process in the St. Louis system, and so we would like to change the language in the statute this year to reflect that. Currently, when an officer is injured in the line of duty and they complete medical treatment here provided by our carrier, a doctor from that carrier will report that the officer is at MMI, maximum medical improvement, and places some kind of limitation on the officer, preventing them from performing the full and unrestricted duties of a police officer. What happens then is the board applies on behalf of the officer to the pension board. And at that time, a clock starts. The officer has 130 working days, after which they'll be dropped from the rolls. Now, during that time, the officer signs a number of medical release forms, and we tried to collect all the records going back to the original stop at the emergency room, any examinations by doctors, treatment, surgeries, and physical therapy. Oftentimes, records after 90 days are moved off-site and are held by some third party, and so it takes a great deal of time to get all that in. Once those records are brought in, they're then put together and sent off to our medical director, who reviews those and determines what particular medical specialty the officer needs to see to perform an IME, an independent medical evaluation. At that time, the medical director identifies 3 doctors from that particular specialty. The officer then goes to see those 3 doctors, and a separate IME is performed with each one. Those reports are then sent back to the medical director, who prepares a report and sends that to the pension board. At this time, the members of the committee, the disability committee, reads the record, which frequently exceeds 1,000 pages, and none of us currently sitting on the board are physicians, so we rely heavily on the recommendations of the doctors that we use. At this point, the officer comes in represented by an attorney, and the committee meets represented by a city councilor. At that time, if there is enough evidence to indicate that the injury was approximate cause of what occurred at work and that they are disabled, and a disability is granted, an accidental disability. If, however, there isn't sufficient, then they might be denied. Now, the pension board has to affirm that decision. If there's a denial, then the officer has an opportunity to appeal. The officer then has to go to a formal hearing, at which a hearing officer is brought in with a stenographer. At that point, the attorney representing the officer frequently goes out and gets additional medical exams for that officer. Some 6 to 8 weeks later, the formal hearing is held. 6 to 8 weeks after that, the hearing officer provides the findings of facts and conclusions of law. If it is again denied, then the officer's opportunity to appeal then goes to the circuit court. As you can imagine, the 130 days are gone, and the officer ends up in limbo, where the board, who dropped them from the rolls, no longer pays for them, and the pension board is not paying any disability because they haven't yet recognized one. So this only happens as limbo if there is a denial of a benefit. The way the Kansas City model works is when an officer is determined to be unable to perform their duties by the medical director of the board, at that point, Human Resources and Benefits from the agency then forwards a complete medical package to the pension system. So it's all the legwork is already done. A doctor is identified through an independent medical provider by the pension board to identify one doctor to do the IME. That IME is then performed, and a report is then sent to the police board and the pension board, and both bodies are bound by statute to honor that. So if the decision comes back that the officer is disabled, the pension board then begins to provide the benefit. If the decision comes back that the officer is not disabled, then the board is then bound to put that officer back to work. This happens much more quickly, and there is, in their experience, no limbo for the officer. We've spoken with the director from the police retirement system, and he's indicated, Mr. Jim Pyle, that they haven't had any problems with this. Our trustees have talked to trustees from the Kansas City system. They've had no problems with it. We've met with the Police Officers Association, the Ethical Society, and the police leadership, and they all endorse this change. As a matter of fact, the Police Officers Association's members of the FOP have actually been in contact with officers from Kansas City and found out for themselves directly that this change would be beneficial to them. So the only way to make this change would be to go to Jefferson City and have them change it in the statute. And Mr. Lawson has a copy of the markup draft that we're submitting, and if he hasn't given that to you yet, I can get you copies after this meeting.
So are you requesting a motion to authorize you to lobby for this change? Is that the...
Actually, we're going to do it anyway, but if the board would endorse it, we can take that up to Jefferson City. As trustees, we're bound to do what we believe is in the best interest of the trust fund. We believe that this is, and it benefits our members. So we're going to apply. All the other labor groups are in support of it. If the board would endorse it through a letter, that would help our cause in Jefferson City substantially.
I move that the board endorse the proposed amendments set forth, and this would be something that would remain in place after the change to local control?
Yes, sir. Actually, the language has been changed after the referendum. so that it reads, the Board of Police Commissioners or any successor body. So after the transition in July, it would be covered.
Okay. So I move that we endorse the proposed changes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Item D concerns a proposed modification to the police manual, specifically Rule 8.103. Rule 8.103 is a bar to reinstatement of officers who have previously resigned from the department but wish to return to the department. And the bar, as it's currently worded, is pretty high in that no one can be reinstated who has resigned under charges of any kind, resigned under investigation, or been discharged from the service of the department. This means it takes in people who have resigned while they've had relatively minor infractions alleged against them. So the proposal is to soften the absolute prohibition that's in the existing Rule 8.103 and instead limit the bar to reinstatement to those whose charges that they've resigned under merited a reduction in rank or a termination. And should be pointed out that the new proposed rule would still allow the chief to prevent the rehire of anyone who was deemed unsatisfactory. So the recommendation is for the board to approve this modified version of Rule 8.103.
What would you consider a minor infraction?
A driving type infraction, failure to wear a seatbelt, something like that.
Any further discussion?
No.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item E concerns proposal as it relates to the handling of exculpatory material by the department, and I believe Colonel Switzer wishes to address this.
Yes, this is something where the idea or the thoughts came up because of the Allen case, but is not directly related to that case. This is a proposal to ask the Chief of Police to provide a report to us by the March meeting to ensure that we are doing everything we need to do at the police department to provide exculpatory material to the Circuit Attorney's Office in any case. That's important for two reasons. One is we want to make sure that innocent people are not convicted, and the other is we don't want guilty people to get off because of a failure to comply with legal and constitutional requirements. I understand from a conversation with the chief that he is ahead of the board on this and has already conferred with the Circuit Attorney's Office on this, and the Circuit Attorney's Office reached out as well to make sure that we are cooperating and doing everything we can to make sure that exculpatory material is provided to the Circuit Attorney's Office. So I will read the proposed motion, which is the Chief of Police shall direct appropriate St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department personnel to evaluate whether new or additional policies or procedures should be adopted to ensure that any exculpatory material is provided to state or federal prosecutors in criminal cases. This evaluation shall include working with the St. Louis Circuit Attorney, who has offered her office's assistance in this matter. The Chief shall present his report on this topic and recommendation for changes, if any, at the regular meeting of the board in March of 2013. This report shall be to assess current policies, practices, and procedures on this topic. Unstated in that motion is that this is not to evaluate right or wrong in any prior investigations or activities. So I present that motion to the board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Colonel, before we close, can I just have 1 second? Earlier, I recognized the members of the SWAT team that were here for their actions yesterday. I saw there are two other lieutenants in the room that I wanted to recognize, Lieutenant Aubuchon and Lieutenant Bachstruck. If you two stand up for a second, please. As we were responding to the incident yesterday, it was very clear that there were people on the scene within a minute, 1 minute of the call being dispatched, taking charge of the scene, directing resources, directing officers, making sure that it was done safely to protect the officers and the students and the faculty there. And I credit those two directly with the responsibility and the credit for achieving that, along with all the responding officers. So thank you two very much.
The next regularly scheduled open board meeting shall be held on Wednesday, February 20, 2013, at Police Headquarters, 1200 Clark Avenue, St. Louis, Missouri. And the board intends to vote to go into closed session at 8:00 a.m. on Wednesday, February 20, 2013, at Police Headquarters, 1200 Clark, to discuss matters of discipline, hiring, firing, promotion, litigation, causes for legal action, and confidential and privileged communications with legal counsel, with a closed record and a closed vote pursuant to Section 610.021 of the Missouri Revised Statutes.
I move that the board go into closed session in order to have confidential communication with legal counsel concerning legal cause of action pursuant to Section 610.021, subsection of Missouri Revised Statute.
Second.
Roll call vote, Colonel Gray.
Aye.
Colonel Irwin.
Aye.
Colonel Switzer.
Aye.
Mayor Slay.
Thank you, everyone.